Alright, so we're going to start our new unit on equations and inequalities. In our notes today, after you've put in your table of contents, this first set is going to be review of decimal and fraction operations, because all of our equations that we're going to be dealing with are going to have fraction and decimal operations. So I just want to do a real quick review with you on how we utilize those things. That way we're not feeling like we can't remember things from 6th grade. So let's real quick just review decimal operations. Remember that when we add and subtract decimals, you have to line up the decimals. So then you can do whatever your operation is. So if I gave you an example, 68 and 1400ths minus a negative 32 and 4800ths, well, you're going to have to also remember your integer rules. Double negative becomes a positive, so this becomes 68 and 1400ths plus 32 and 4800ths. Bring down your decimal, make sure everything is nice and lined up, and 162 hundredths. In like manner, if you have an extra, sometimes you have to put a decimal placeholder. So if I gave you 2 and 81 hundredths plus 9 and 63 hundredths minus 2 and 7 tenths, we are going to have to add this 0 here, so that everything can work out together. So these are both positive, so we're going to add those up. 2 and 81 hundredths, 9 and 63 hundredths. Line up your decimal. 4, 14, 12. And then we also, now we have a minus, so we have 12 and 44 hundredths minus 2 and 7 tenths, or 70 hundredths. Bring down your decimal. You're going to have to do a little bit of borrowing. So 9 and 74 hundredths. When you multiply decimals, remember you multiply like normal, then you count and move. So you count how many numbers are behind a decimal in the problem, and you move that many in the answer. So here's an example of that. Hopefully this is all coming back to you. If I had 2 and 300ths times a negative 2 tenths, so you do not have to line up the decimals. If you recall, you simply need to multiply like there are no decimals. 604. Negative times a positive is a negative. I have 1 number behind the decimal here. I have 2 here. So that means I need to move a total of 3. And we always move from right to left. So my answer here is a negative 406 thousandths. So make sure that you are counting. The biggest mistake people make is they count left to right. But remember, if this is 406, the decimal is at the back. And then we can count. When we divide, you have to remember you cannot have a decimal outside. So remember, when we do that, we need to move. So if I gave you 0.0483 divided by a negative 2.1, well, first of all, you have to remember what goes where. First number always goes inside. So I'm not going to put my extra 0. You can if you want. Negative 2.1. So, first of all, negative divided by a positive, you know this is going to be a negative answer. And if I need to make this a whole number outside, if I move it once to the left on the outside, I have to move it once to the I'm sorry, once to the right on the outside, once to the right on the inside, and then bring my decimal up. And now I can multiply, or I can divide like normal. 21 does not go into 0. It does not go into 4. It goes into 48 twice. And it goes into 63 3 times. So my answer here is going to be a negative 23 thousandths. So there's your review for decimals. For fractions, let's do a little bit of fraction review. When we add and subtract fractions, we must have a common denominator, and we have to make sure that whatever you do to make that common denominator on the bottom, you have to also do it on the top. So if I had, for example, negative 3/10 and a positive 6/15, well, I have to first realize that these signs are different. So I'm actually, even though there's a plus here, we're going to have to subtract. I was taught to write vertically, so I'm just going to rewrite this so that it looks pleasing to me. You write it however you prefer. Common denominator between 10 and 15 is 30. So I have to remember, what do I need to do to get 30? So times 3. Well, if I multiply 10 times 3, I have to multiply the top times 3 times 2 times 2. So now again, I have to realize that this is really saying 12/30 minus 9/30, which is in fact 3/30. I have more positives. This is a positive 3. And then I need to simplify to get 1/10. Sometimes we have mixed numbers. And when we have mixed numbers, we have to also keep in mind our rules. So if I have a negative 4 minus 2 4/7, I need to remember that these are actually both negative. So really all I'm doing here is adding, because this is saying I owe $4 to my mom, and I owe another $2 4/7 to my dad. So really, even though this makes us want to think we have to borrow, this is really, we're just adding. This is a negative 6 4/7. You're going to add and keep the sign. So let's look at another one where that is not the case. If I had 3 3/5 minus 2/3, again, common denominator, this time it's going to be 15. And what I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top. So this is a part where we have to think about this. I have 3 9/15 and I have 10/15. I cannot take 10/15 away from 9/15. I'm going to have to borrow. So this 3 becomes a 2. And I need to add the whole. Well, if my denominator is 15, my whole is 15/15. So now I have 2. 9 plus 15 is 24. So I have 24/15 minus 10/15. And now I can do this. So this is going to be 14/15 and 2. So remember, when you add and subtract fractions, you have to have a common denominator. Multiplying and dividing are a lot easier. So when you multiply, super simple, no whole numbers, no whole or mixed numbers. You have to change that. Okay, they need to be improper or proper fractions, and then we do top times top and bottom times bottom. So if I gave you the example, I'm going to show you both. So I can do 7/8 times 1/2. 7 times 1 is 7. 8 times 2 is 16. I cannot simplify that. I am done. But if I had a mixed number, if I have 9 3/5 times 5/12, I can't do this. I'm going to have to say denominator times whole number plus numerator. It's been called a lot of different things, backwards C, boomerang, all kinds of stuff. Either way, when we rewrite this, this is 45, 46, 47, 48 over 5 times 5 over 12. So now I can do top times top. 48 times 5 is 240 over 60. You have to make sure you simplify. I can take off my zeros. 24 over 6 is 4. Some of you may have been taught to cross reduce. I know that my kids learned that. If I was to do that, all I'm doing is I'm looking diagonally to see. So I have 5 over 5. I know that simplifies to 1 whole. 48 over 12. 12 goes into both of those. 12 goes into 48 4 times. 12 goes into 12 once. Now I have 4 times 1 and 1 times 1, which is still 4. So you can either simplify before you multiply or multiply and then simplify. Division is very, very similar. Same rules as multiplying, no mixed numbers, no whole numbers, and you're going to do keep, change, flip. So if I have 9/12 divided by 5/6, then what you're going to do, we're going to keep this 9/12. Always keep the very first one. The divide changes to a multiply. Flip the second. That is called the reciprocal. Now it looks just like what we did up here. Top times top. 9 times 6 is 54. 12 times 5 is 60. I know that that will simplify by 6. 6 goes into 54 9 times. 6 goes into 60 10. You can also do what I did up here. If you're comfortable with that, we can say 9/12 times 6/5. And I know that 6 and 12, we can simplify that. 6 goes into both. 6 goes into 6 once. 6 goes into 12 twice. And now I have 9 times 1 is 9. 2 times 5 is 10. If you have a mixed number, you are still going to have to change it like we did before. I've run out of room over here. I'm going to go to my next page. So if I have 2 and 3/5 divided by a negative 3 and 6/7, again, I have to change this. This is going to be 13/5. Don't change this to a times yet. Always change the whole thing first. Then do keep, change, flip. Otherwise, you confuse yourself. 21 and 6 is 27 over 7. Now I can do keep, change, keep your sign, and flip. Looking at this, we're going to go positive times a negative is a negative. 7 times 13 is 91 over 5 times 27 is 135. Looking at that, I don't believe we can simplify that, so we're going to stop there. I hope this review was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions.